back in I think it was 2017. It might have been 16. Must have been 17. 2017, Chuck Pierce prophesied over me. I was at Bishop Hammond's church, and I ran into him in the hallway as he was leaving. He's like, "I'm glad I ran into you." He said, "I have a word for you." And he pulled out this mantle, and he wrapped it around me, and he said, "The Lord has called you to go into the nations and teach prophets how to throw Jezebel off the wall." And I was like, whoa, that's a big word, And it was the same night that I was ordained at CI. So he had this word for me. Then a few months later, maybe not even a few months, it might have been a few weeks, a friend of mine, Sadhu Sundar Selvaraj, called me, and he said, I'd like to invite you to go with me on a tour, 8 nations, and I'd like you to teach the prophets how to deal with Jezebel. And I said, would you look at that? That was a quick partial manifestation of that promise. So I told him I'd pray about it, but of course I knew it was the will of the Lord, but I still prayed because it's the responsible thing to do. But the first stop was Nigeria. And so a few days before we left the country, I'd never been to Africa before at that point. A few days before we left the country, this lady came up to me after church service. She's like, "Oh, you don't want to go to Nigeria. It's going to be a lot of warfare. It's going to be a lot of problems. You don't want to go. I really suggest, she did everything but say, 'Thus saith the Lord.' You can't go." But I knew that it was the will of the Lord because I had the prophecy. And then Sadhu asked me to go. And I wasn't going to tell him no because some lady was afraid. So we went. And the funny thing about it is we had to fly in. And I was only able to spend one day and had to fly back home because I had an event. So we flew like 30 hours. And we were on the ground for like 36 hours. Then we flew back home like 30 hours. It was but I had to keep my word. So, because other things came up. So we flew into Lagos with no problem. I mean, we got there and it was like, wow, this is pretty intense here in the airport. It really was. And I'm like, oh boy, and they came and took us out of the line. And I thought, oh, we're in trouble. We're getting arrested. Because like the officers, and they're like, come with us. And I'm like, oh, I said, PV, what did you do? What did you do? What have you done? I'm not with her. Take her. And, but what happened was, it was actually they had arranged for the government to come and take us out of the line. And we're just sitting there in that room. And I'm like, what did you do? What did you do? She's like, well, I didn't do anything. What did you do? And I'm like, I don't know. But they were the government was escorting us in, and we didn't realize it. So they let us right through, and we didn't have any issues. And it was really, really something. And we went to this compound. It was all secure, and there was a room. Probably bigger than this, but it was packed. I mean, it was packed with Nigerians, and they were all wearing their get-ups. They had the Nigerian dresses and the hats and all of it. They were dressed to the nines, and there was men there too, but just a whole bunch, like hundreds. And there was like a side room too, and there was all these ones. And my one thing was to teach, I think, 4 sessions that day on Jezebel. So I did, and when it came time when we were to demonstrate like how to pray about this Jezebel thing with regard to the prophetic. And so I started praying, and I'm like, Yesharabah, I command you, Jezebel spirit. I speak to the spirit of Jezebel. And as soon as I said that, all the lights in the compound went off. Wow. I mean, it was the devil. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I looked up, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she's taping. And I'm like, good, you're taping it, you're getting it, you're taping it. And we still have that. And anyway, if we were in America and I was doing that, right, the intercessors would have been like, ah! But all of a sudden, they all stood up, oh, Sharabaka. They were like doing them deep Nigerian type, yeah, Rabasha. And about like 10 seconds later, all the lights came back on. Jezebel was like, nee. So it was really successful. I had a great time. It was quite an experience being in Nigeria, to say the least. But when the assignment was over, so we flew home Friday, got home late Friday night. The next Saturday morning, I had an intensive. I had planned on water spirits. So, I mean, yeah, no, I was like really hard. You think I'm hardcore now. No, I was just, I didn't sleep for years, praise God. I did, but I mean, I was more hardcore than I am now. I'm wiser now. It's not because I'm older, because I'm wiser. And so we flew back in to home Friday night late. I got up, went to AHOP, did the intensive 4 classes on water spirits. I got done with that, went home, and I was energized. I was like, feeling good. And so I sat down, started reading the Bible, and I got up to get some coffee, and I took 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. And on the 3rd step, it was like something in the spirit it was like a lasso and yanked, and I heard my ankle pop, and immediately my foot blew up like this. She and her daughter had to come over because I was like, I don't even know what just happened. That was the counterattack. We didn't have any warfare when we were there. We were under Sadhu's covering, and he has people in Nigeria. We had no warfare when we were in Nigeria. We came home, and I paid for that about a year and a half. That thing took to heal because it kept getting re-injured, and because I was still traveling, re-injured. The best part about the whole thing was I couldn't walk to the airport, so she had to push me in the wheelchair. I had a chauffeur. Now, she loved it. Didn't you? It was an honor, wasn't it? It was like pouring water over Elijah's hands, wasn't it? So that counterattack plagued me for a year. That was a Jezebel. This is what I believe. It was a Jezebel spirit working with the Python spirit. And it was retaliation. And I made the mistake of letting my guard down because I felt so good. And I'll never make that mistake. Well, I hope to never make that mistake again, to let my guard down. And here's the thing. You should never fear a counterattack because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So we shouldn't fear the counterattack. The enemy wants us to fear the counterattack. We're not going to let him make us afraid. As a matter of fact, fear will actually open the door wider to a counterattack and all kind of other attacks because it's sin. Whatever's not of faith is sin. And you know how dogs can smell fear, right? They can smell fear. And if they know you're afraid, well, you're in trouble. They might bite you. So we need to be aware, but not afraid. So Paul the apostle, he was aware of the reality of counterattacks. He had a lot of them. He was aware, but he wasn't afraid. And he warned us not to be ignorant of the devil's devices, didn't he? He said, we're not ignorant of the devil's devices. The implication is we shouldn't be either. We should not be ignorant of the devil's devices. And the counterattack is one of his devices. That's one of his devices. You know, John Osteen, not Joel Osteen, but the father of Joel Osteen, John Osteen, was a mighty, mighty man of God. And I'm not picking on Joel. He's not anything like his dad. I guess he was more like his mom, and she was a powerful woman. But John Osteen, he once said this. Listen closely. More battles are lost in counterattacks than any other kind of battle. More battles are lost in counterattacks than any, that's why we're teaching on this, because it's a little taught on. And we need to understand the reality of these counterattacks. So before you engage in significant battles, you have little battles, little counterattacks. Big battles, big counterattacks. So before you engage in significant battles, it's important to understand this concept of counterattacks. And really, we're going to drill down hard on this. And again, not to be paranoid, some people actually will not engage in warfare because they're afraid of the counterattack. Well, that's just stupidity gone to seed. I mean, we are in a war. We are fighting the good fight of faith. We're to submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. We have the keys of the kingdom. We're to bind and loose, right? We're obviously in a battle, so not to engage in the battle is forfeiting the spoils of war. Amen. I said not to engage in the battle. You're just letting the enemy do whatever he wants in your life. So no, we're not going to be afraid of the counterattack, and we're not going to be afraid of any of it because Jesus already won. He already won. We're just enforcing his will, so we don't have to be afraid. And one of the keys to successfully enforcing Christ's victory in your life is to know your enemy and how he operates. And many believers don't understand the dynamics of a counterattack. I'm probably going to say some things today and through this series that make sense, and you might kind of know it, but I'm going to break it down to where you're never going to forget it, because that's where so many believers, like John Osteen said, you get it, but then you get the counterattack and you've lost it. What good is it to have a victory for 5 minutes or 5 days and not be able to keep it? What good is it to have your healing and then it comes right back, right? We want to keep it. And the counterattack intends to rob from us the victory that we achieved, the advancement, the progress that we made. So you can't maintain your victory if you don't understand counterattacks. You didn't lose your breakthrough because it wasn't real. You lost it because you didn't see the counterattack coming.
Too many believers celebrate the victory and drop their guard. They think the battle is over because the prayer was answered, the door opened, the chains broke, or the breakthrough finally came. And that's when the enemy retaliates. It's called a counterattack, and you need to expect it. You need to discern the enemy's maneuvers and shut him down before he has a chance to strike. My course, Disarming Demonic Counterattacks, will teach you how to recognize retaliation early, shut down backlash, and protect what God just released in your life. You'll learn the enemy's patterns, his pressure points, and his tactics so you're not shocked when resistance rises. If you're advancing, you can expect pushback. If you're breaking through, you should anticipate retaliation. But if you're aware, you'll keep standing in victory. Don't let the enemy reclaim ground you fought to gain. Don't let backlash steal what heaven released. Get the course, Disarming Demonic Counterattacks, how to stand your ground when hell pushes back. Enroll now, because the next counterattack won't wait until you're ready. Go to schoolofthespirit.tv and learn how to push back the pushback.